Welcome to the Safety Pro Podcast, where we help you manage workplace safety one episode at a time. And now, your very own Safety Pro, Blaine J. Hoffman.
Okay, hey, I hope you're ready for the third episode in the VPP series. Yes, that's right. I'm still talking about VPP. Remember, there's 4 elements. So at a minimum, I'm going to be talking about this 4 different episodes, right? We're on the third element of the VPP, which, of course, is hazard prevention and control. And again, I have to go ahead and throw this out here. This is brought to you by the VPP Simplified Gap Tool, making this available for the first time. I've used this tool for many years in the past. It's been updated over the last couple of years, and more recently, it's an interactive spreadsheet that breaks down all 4 elements of the VPP. Their sub-elements. It's a stoplight enabling you to indicate your current state, and of course, document review, interview, and observation, and you're allowed to check off, how you validated that current state, and then there's a notes section that allows you to capture notes on how you're meeting or exceeding that sub-element, which will then, for VPP companies, will then go into your VPP application. So this interactive gap tool, again, I used it with clients. Clients still use it. Non-VPP clients that I had used it and are still using it. I'm making it available. The link should be in the show notes, or go to consulthoffman.com, 2 F's and 2 N's on Hoffman. You'll get there. I'm not going to belabor that. You know how I am. I'll repeat it again. I don't care if you get it or not if you buy the gap tool. I'm going to go line by line for this third element for you. You just take good notes and go ahead and put these things into place, okay? So this is information you can actually take and use right now. You can, without even getting the tool, okay? So this episode is dedicated to the third element of VPP, hazard prevention and control. So the sub-elements for hazard prevention and control are as follows. A, hazard prevention and control, the main topic. B, occupational health care program. And that's it. You've got 2 sub-elements, and there are some important points in those 2 that we got to talk about. In general, hazard prevention and control is, what we're going to start with. So hazard controls have to be selected based on the type of hazards personnel are exposed to. Also, the severity of the hazards and the risk the hazards pose to personnel. The concern here is not whether you follow the hierarchy of controls, but whether the selected controls are protecting employees from exposure to a serious hazard. Are they effective? So yeah, you want to use the hierarchy of controls, definitely. Eliminate or engineer out the hazard is the first option. Administrative controls or work practices are the second one, and the last line of defense is PPE. PPE is basically saying, hey look, a person has to be there with the hazard and we can't change anything about that hazard, so what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this worker up in stuff. Goggles, hard hat, jackets, face shield, whatever, PPE, and they're going to be coexisting with that hazard, and we hope that hazard doesn't reach them. So that's why we say PPE is the last line of defense. So the question here is whether or not you've effectively prevented exposure to a hazard. Go down the hierarchy of controls, certainly, but at the end, if they could still access a hazard, it wasn't effective. And here's another question they're going to ask. Does the facility use engineering controls to reduce personnel exposure to hazards when needed, not just by the standard, but when you can go above and beyond? So as I said before, engineering controls and elimination of the hazard is the first thing you want to look at. But a lot of folks will just slap a guard on something and you can still get your fingers in the machine or something like that. You can just reach around the guard and stick an arm in there. So be careful when you choose the hierarchy of controls. Remember, their focus isn't so much that you're following the hierarchy. It's what's the end result. Can you still access the hazard, yes or no? Have your existing hazard control programs, as required by OSHA standards, and that pertain to your facility, like HazCom, respiratory protection, lockout, tagout, confined space, stuff like that. Have they been reviewed to ensure compliance with all guidelines, including annual program review and personnel training? So having a written program and sitting it on a shelf collecting dust, yet nobody's aware of it, and it's not being followed in the workplace. I just ran down 3 P's for you. Paper, people, places. We've got a written program, yes. Check that box. Nobody's aware of it. and they're certainly not following it. So the people and the places, the workplace. So we should see a written mandate to follow this policy, procedure, or process. We should see that documented somehow. So that would be paper. We have to train people on it. That's the fourth element of VPP we'll get into, is safety and health training. So the people are aware of it. That's the second P, people. And we should go out there and be able to witness it. We should be able to see it or observe it being followed, or evidence of it being followed. That's places. That's the workplace. So you want to be able to check all three of those boxes on your VPP Simplified Gap Tool if you have one. If not, that's what you're going to want to shoot for. You're going to want to shoot for that across the board. Paper, people, places. Repeat that to yourself. 3 Ps, okay? Also, you're going to want to make sure that hazard controls are documented in procedures and safety and health rules, communicated in training, and checked during self-inspections. JSAs are a great way to, make this happen, is to make sure you document step by step of a process, and then the different hazards associated with each, and then how employees are going to avoid those, manage those, how the company has mitigated or eliminated those. And that lays a foundation for some training, not to jump ahead to the fourth element, but you see how these things all tie together, right? Also, establish and communicate written procedures for responding during all shifts to all types of emergencies: fire, chemicals, spills, mishaps, even natural disasters, or civil strife could be one, like a strike. If you're a union shop, you got to be able to respond to these things. The procedures should include emergency evacuation plans, telephone numbers, how personnel are notified of emergency situations, and who, by job title, is responsible for handling each type of emergency. Ensure that all contractors, visitors, and vendors are made aware of emergency procedures, like alarms, evacuation routes, and muster locations, stuff like that. So you've got to be able to wrap all that up, okay? And you have to have a way to do this. Now, the issue here is whether the site has a procedure for dealing with foreseeable emergencies. If no emergency plan exists, or if your plan is so limited that it doesn't address foreseeable emergencies, it is not minimally effective. Also, very, very important, at least one drill per year for each high-risk process, task, or activity, as stated in your emergency program or any applicable OSHA standards, has to be conducted and assessed for effectiveness. So if you write that a foreseeable hazard could be a bomb threat, you've got to at least have some form of practice or drill or walkthrough, like you tabletop it or something, at least once a year. So make sure that you cover everything that you've written in your procedures. Preventative and predictive maintenance has to be accomplished for all equipment and facilities at your workplace. Set up your PM, get with maintenance, get with the manufacturer of this equipment, and especially your facilities. If it's a leased building, make sure that you check with any contracts that your landlord has set up to cover some facilities that aren't under your custody and control. Make sure that a process is in place to ensure correct PPE is being selected for use. Now, the key here is that it has to be selected based on the hazards employees are likely to be exposed to. Now, you may fall under a PSM, right, a process safety management program. If so, you have to make sure that's developed and ensure that all chemicals in qualifying quantities are listed. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the second sub-element, the occupational health care program. Adequate occupational health care program has to be developed that documents the nature of the hazards found, ensures safety and industrial hygiene programs are interacting with and integrated into the medical program, and includes specific programs and protocols for fit testing, pre-placement physicals, hearing conservation, hazardous waste operations, so HAZWOPER, stuff like that. The occupational healthcare program has to contain provisions addressing access, coordination of, and procedures to follow when personnel are requesting or using certified or licensed healthcare professionals not elsewhere available at the facility. So if folks have to leave to seek occupational health care outside the workplace, we've got to have provisions in place on how they can do that, where they can go, who they can access. Also, this is one of your basic elements here, but you'd be surprised how this trips some folks up. Your 300 log. You've got to maintain those. You've got to maintain them. It's got to contain all the injuries and illnesses that meet the definition of a OSHA recordable injury or illness. You've got to have it certified by a company executive. That's stated right on the log, on the summary actually itself, on who signs that. And of course, it's got to be posted, right? The previous year's complete summary has to be posted from February 1 through April 30. That's just make sure you're doing the basic stuff. So I just ran down the third element of VPP. This is another quick one. There are only 2 sub-elements, but it can get pretty involved. So make sure that you are putting these into place in your program. Make sure that hazard prevention and control is something you're really, really focusing on. You know, you've established that you have management commitment and employee involvement. You've got a good foundation for your safety and health management system. You've conducted a baseline hazard analysis of your work site and all your processes and equipment. You're conducting frequent inspections, near miss investigations, incident and injury reviews, and you've got a good PM schedule set up. Now you're moving on to, how are we going to control all the stuff that we're finding, that we discover? What are our hazard prevention and control measures like? And don't forget the occupational health care aspect, the health part of safety and health, right? How do we take care of our employees who get ill or injured, or how do we help them seek safety or health care for work-related issues if they have to leave the facility to do so? So make sure you're doing this and putting these things in place. And look, go to the website, follow the link in the show notes for the VPP Simplified tool, the Gap tool. It really will help you lay all this out in a very organized fashion. And the bar charts and the data that you will get after you do your baseline current state with the stoplight and check off how you verified these items, the paper people places. Once you get that set, you go right over to these bar charts. It tells you which areas you're really falling short in. You're really not doing too hot in incident investigation, worksite analysis. You're really not doing too hot in employee safety and health training. You're really going to be able to show leadership. We want an excellent safety and health program. We want to be the best of the best. Forget VPP. But we want to take care of our people. These are the 3, 4, 5, 8 areas that we need to focus on, and we need to hit them hard. You've got a basis to make that case, right? You've got that foundation. So check out the tool. Otherwise, just listen to these episodes, this series of episodes. Take good notes. Shoot some emails to me. I get emails after every podcast episode anyway. Shoot me some emails. I'll help you out. Just, give me some time to get through them. I will answer you. And if it's a great question that you bring up or issue you bring up, you never know. It's going to probably make it on the podcast, on a future podcast episode. So, hey, tune in for the next one where I cover the final 4th element of VPP, safety and health training, and we break that down. And we wrap up the 4-part series on the voluntary protection program. And again, I'm going to restate it. If you're not interested in VPP, that's okay. These 4 elements and sub-elements are what OSHA says every employer should have at a minimum for an excellent safety and health management system anyway. So you're going to benefit from this, even if you have no intention of submitting an application to OSHA to partner with them in the VPP. You can still go through this and reap the benefits of an excellent safety and health management system. So, hey, stay tuned, keep the emails coming, and until next time, be safe.
Thanks for listening to the Safety Pro Podcast. Be sure to visit www.consulthoffman.com for articles and information about safety services. To have Blaine read your question on the show, email him at customerservice@consulthoffman.com. Be sure to have 2 F's and 2 N's on Hoffman. Until next time, be safe.